Hi. If Israel is justified in killing civilians because of the acts of terror committed by Hamas, why isn't Hamas justified in doing what it did? Because Israel is keeping 13,000 children. It has tried them in military courts. Since the establishment of Israel, 55,000 Palestinian homes have been bulldozed. So why isn't Hamas justified in doing what it did if we use your logic?
So I'm going to answer your question, then I'm going to ask you a question if you don't mind. Is that all right? So my answer is that Israel would not be justified in killing Palestinian civilians because of the actions of terrorists. Israel would be justified in attempting to kill terrorists, and civilian casualties are a cost of war. That is just a reality of life. During World War II, there were 70,000 Brits who died during the Blitz bombing, and there were 2 million Germans who died, civilians who died during World War II. And I don't see a lot of monuments in Britain because of the 2 million civilians who died in Germany. The costs of war are brutal, they're terrible, they're horrifying. There's a vast difference in moral scope between deliberately going into a civilian area and murdering everyone you can find and trying to kill a terrorist who is deliberately hiding beneath a civilian area, hiding their rockets in civilian areas, starving their own people. There is a vast difference. Okay, so now I get to ask my question, if you don't mind. So my question is, do you believe that there is a moral difference between Hamas going into, for example, Kfar Aza and murdering entire families, and Israel attempting to target terrorists and accidentally hitting civilians?
Israel is effectively doing the same because Gaza is the most densely populated region in the world. There are 15,000 people per square mile.
So does Hamas get immunity because they're there? So Hamas gets immunity. So
Israel has killed 3,500 children in the past 3 weeks. That's more children. That's more children than have died in conflicts around the world in each of the last 4 years.
So just to be clear, your logic is that if you're a terrorist group located in a densely populated community and you hide behind civilians, you are now immune.
Where are the children meant to go?
So you're immune. Okay. That's a violation of the Geneva Conventions, but okay. You're now immune. Your logic is that if you're a Hamas terrorist...
Sorry, since 2005, 23 out of every 24 conflict deaths have been Palestinian. I don't see any moral equivalency there. It's clearly unjust what the IDF has been doing to the Palestinians because there's a vast disparity between the number of Palestinians being killed and the number of Israelis.
I mean, I would certainly hope that Israel is killing more Hamas
This isn't
members.
A conflict. This isn't a conflict. This is one-sided ethnic cleansing.
So, again, I'm just asking you, if based on the numbers, more Germans died than Brits in World War II, did that mean that the British were wrong in World War II? Because they did. Many more Germans died than Brits. Based on the numbers, does that mean that Britain was wrong in World War II?
Britain wasn't bombing civilians.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, one and all, to the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. What's on tap for today? Well, as you saw, that was a little bit of a fiery exchange between that member of the Oxford Union and Ben Shapiro. We're going to get to the rest of that video. A lot to unpack there, folks. So let's get to it right now. So I'm just going to take it back just a few seconds, okay, because I want to replay that so you guys can hear it once again, and we'll go from there.
Where are the children meant to go?
So you're immune. Okay. That's a violation of the Geneva Conventions, but okay. You're now immune. Your logic is that if you're a Hamas terrorist...
Sorry, since 2005, 23 out of every 24 conflict deaths have been Palestinian. I don't see any moral equivalency there. It's clearly unjust what the IDF has been doing to the Palestinians because there's a vast disparity between the number of Palestinians being killed and the number of Israelis.
I mean, I would certainly hope that Israel is killing more Hamas
This isn't
members.
A conflict. This isn't a conflict. This is one-sided ethnic cleansing.
So, again, I'm just asking you, if based on the numbers, more Germans died than Brits in World War II, did that mean that the British were wrong in World War II? Because they did. Many more Germans died than Brits. Based on the numbers, does that mean that Britain was wrong in World War II?
Britain wasn't bombing civilians.
Okay, see, here's what happens. When people, again, this person is obviously just focusing right now on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. That's what's going on in the world right now. That's what everybody is focusing on. That's what everybody is basically fixated on. Okay, we understand that. But now she's talking about moral equivalency. She's also talking about the fact that the IDF is supposedly, well, it is bigger, stronger, more well-armed, more weapons. It's a country state, whereas Hamas isn't really a country. It's just a supposedly, according to her, would be, a political group, right? So when the moral equivalency is, if 60, 70, 80,000 British people died during the bombing raids, when Germany was bombing the crap out of Britain, and so Britain and the Allies decided to return the favor, and over 2 million Germans were killed, someone could say, where's the proportionality in that? Was that a proportioned response? It's war. You're going to have civilian casualties. How else do you bring a war to an end? People have to make these kinds of decisions. Now, the question of proportionality in terms of the retaliatory strike by Israel against what she mentioned is obviously one of the most densely populated areas in the world, the Gaza Strip. That's a question to be debated. Where is proportionality? But for this lady to come up here and to say, oh, Britain didn't bomb the Germans, where the hell has she been? Anyways, let's continue.
There's a clear difference.
You should talk to the people in Dresden, but you can't because they're dead.
There's a clear difference. I agree that war is horrible, but this is not a just war. What Israel is doing is not a just war. There is a difference between fighting the Nazis.
So it is not a just war.
Fighting the Nazis.
It is not a just war when you fight a war against people who murder 1,500 of your civilians and take 233 of them, at last count, captive into tunnels. It is not a just war to obliterate them. Please name a just war.
Israel's been killing civilians for the past 75 years, and there was no headlines about it, and nobody said that the Palestinians were
Israel
justified
does not
in
purposefully kill
retaliating.
Civilians. Palestinian terrorists do.
Israel has not purposefully killed civilians. Are you willing to stand by that statement?
If Israel put down its guns tomorrow, there would be a second Holocaust. If the Palestinians put down their guns tomorrow, there would be a Palestinian state.
I totally agree with that. I don't think, folks, that somebody, a 19, 20-year-old kid that just gets drafted into the military service, because I believe in Israel, after you graduate from school, you're supposed to spend, I think, a year or two in some sort of military service or service to the country. So if you're asking me, does a kid who just graduates out of high school go there? You think he's waking up every day thinking, hey, I got to go ahead and do some harm to somebody today. I got to commit a violent act against a Palestinian or somebody. I don't think that happens. But do I really think, if somebody asks me that question and says, what do you think of a Hamas terrorist when he wakes up in the morning? What's he thinking of doing? If he could do harm or a violent act against Israelis or against the state of Israel and and do something that would cause damage and bloodshed? Absolutely. Absolutely, folks, I believe that. Anyone that doesn't, I think, needs to have their head examined. But like we were saying there, if Israel laid down and said, you know what, we'll get rid of the Iron Dome, we'll get rid of our weapons, we'll get rid of our guns, we won't fight, we won't do anything. There's not going to be an Israel, folks, there wouldn't be. But if, he said, hey, if Hamas decided to say, listen, we're coming to the peace talks, we're coming to the peace table, we want to negotiate, that's it. No more violence, no more terrorist attacks. Let's sit down at the table. Let's see how we can settle this. There would be a brokered peace. There would be a two-state solution. But Hamas doesn't want it, and I think many of the members of the old PLO don't want it, because just like we do over here in the United States of America, with race baiters and race traders, okay, that are always trying to, manipulate the media perspective and manipulate the population into thinking that it's blacks against whites, whites against blacks, Jews against Christians, Christians against Muslims, the people versus the establishment, all this stuff goes on. It makes a ton of money, folks, a ton of money. Said before, follow the money. Anyways, let's continue.
That is the reality. And let me ask you this.
There would not be a Palestinian settlement.
I'm going to ask you the last question, the same question I asked her. Which part of Palestine is occupied?
the entirety of Palestine. But
There we go.
I'm not
Thank you
calling
once
for
again.
the destruction of Jews.
I appreciate
I'm
appreciate you expressing your full genocidal intent
Why-
for the Jewish people living between the river.
Why
and
is
the
it genocidal to call for a state that is not apartheid? You can have a state where all citizens have equal rights, Jews and Muslims.
I'm sure that's going to go
That's
amazingly
not genocidal.
under the same people who are governing the Gaza Strip, where currently zero Jews live.
The time. Can we move on to the next question, please?
So there you have it, folks. I mean, when, Ben Shapiro again asked that question, what part of proper Israel, where do you define Palestine? And they go, all of it. All of Israel is not Israel. All of Israel should be Palestine. And so he said, who's going to rule that? The PLO? Hamas? The same people that are supposedly ruling over the Gaza Strip? That's who we want to rule Israel? I mean, it's not going to happen, folks. You want to talk about a genocide? Oh my goodness! That Ben said, it would be a second Holocaust. The charter of Hamas is the destruction of Israel. I mean, how much clearer can you get? It's the first thing in the Constitution of the Hamas charter, folks. Anyways, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host, Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow us. You know what to do. Follow the links above and below. They're somewhere around there. My final thoughts: when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. We'll see you again next time, folks. Until then, stay safe and take care.